lot of competition tonight as far as the basketball games. So I figured any of the guys in the back that are watching the game, at least if we're Michigan's winning, give me at least a thumbs up. And I was really nervous with Haley, right? She was telling me to hurry up, talk fast, and get off the stage because we got to get out of here. I was a little nervous with that. But thank you very much. Has anyone seen God's Not Dead, or anyone seen that yet? Oh my goodness. The last year and a half I've taken a sabbatical. I went out to Kentucky to save a Christian athletic program, and the campus that we have is all the students on campus are athletes. So imagine that. If only the students on campus were athletes, what kind of program we'd have. There's 2,200 students, but most of them are off campus. And for them, the only reason we could get them into chapel, which is twice a week, is I told the coaches that if your athletes are not in the chairs in chapel, I will fire you. So the kids showed up at chapel. The other thing is they had, academically, they usually weren't that good. So I told the coaches this, here's the deal, get your kids in the classroom or I will fire you. And we had the best academic year in the history of the school. So to be here at a public institution and see people gathered for Christ is astounding to me. Because on my campus, if we didn't have mandatory chapel, I don't think 5% of the campus would show up. So if you haven't seen God's Not Dead yet, you are that example. And as I thought about the demographics that, what do you want to hear? Is there any seniors in the room? I know there's Sarah. If you need counseling, she needs counseling, so, but, how many seniors? Any juniors? Okay. When I teach finance classes, usually I teach, to a little bit a different demographic. But when I look out here, the demographic of male to female is normal. When it comes to finances, the financial burden put on houses is always, for whatever reason, given to the females. The females are the ones that receive the tremendous pressure. And if you know anything about money and finance, what do you think the number one cause for divorce or reason for divorce is in the United States? Financial pressures, financial anxiety. So what I end up doing is I spend most of my time teaching the women to try and get the men to come in here and to step up to be men. Any females in here would like to have a godly male husband that's a provider that takes care of you financially? Anyone excited about that? How many men in this room would like to be able to be a provider for your family? Your wife works or chooses to work based on her, to be a provider for your family. So when you think about what is the rules for, have you ever heard of go to school, get a degree, get a good job, and usually when you get a good job, what's the first thing you go do? You buy a car, it's the first thing you do. And then sometimes you get married, and sometimes you get a house, and sometimes you have kids. Sometimes that order gets messed up. But I remember when I graduated in 1980 from college out in Oklahoma, there was a great recession at that time. Interest rates on my mortgage was 17%, so very, very hard market. And I was an athlete, and I painted. I had a journeyman's license in painting, and I remember going to my business professor, and he said, because I painted, I had a crew of 7 people that worked for me, and I made $50,000 in 1980. So that was more than most of the professors made. But my business professor says, Kevin, you need to go get a good job. And I looked at him and thinking, I control my own schedule, I work with who I want to work with, I may not have a clean job, but I think I have a pretty good career, good kickoff. So I was a business major, but I couldn't get a job. But I was not afraid to work and go after it. So what I realized a long time ago is that the business world has it all messed up. What they do is they tell you, like, again, go get a degree, do this, do this, do this. And what happens is you get a career, and then you build your entire life around your career. So you have a family, and when you have to go to work, you come and go whenever they tell you to come and go. You try and move up the corporate ladder, and that didn't make any sense to me. So this is what I did. I decided what's important to me as far as values, which was my family. So I built a business. I could be there for my family anytime that I wanted to be. I could make any income that I wanted to be. And so I built a lifestyle that was around my career. So it's an interesting thing to think about versus go get a job. How many people in here would like to have a job? And let me take it to another level. How many people here would like to live on purpose instead of accidentally? To live on purpose instead of accidentally. And see, what happens is, what I would challenge you, don't just get a job, get something that you're passionate about on here. And I wanted to start out with, there's a couple key questions on here. It's like, what do you want? Now, a few of you want to graduate. Anyone want to have a job this summer? Anyone want to work yet, or you still want to be dependent upon mom and dad? Anybody do you want to be independent or dependent upon mom and dad? Anyone want to be any economic independent people minded in this room? So, in Mark 10:46 through 52, you can look up the verse, but there's this guy named Bart. He was a blind guy that got up every morning and he would go sit at the gate. And what would he do at the gate? Bart, the blind guy, sitting at the gate. He would beg for money because he usually got hungry and wanted to eat. So this one day, Bart gets up and he's a listener because he can't see. And there's this guy named Jesus, this guy named Jesus that people are talking about, and Bart's sitting by the gate, and he stands up, he goes, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." You know what the people around him said to do? Shut up. Don't talk anymore. Usually if you talk about your faith in any place like this, a public institution, most people say, well, just shut up. So this guy's over here at the gate saying, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." He starts yelling louder. And when I think about that story, so you got the blind guy over there, Jesus is walking, and this guy's trying to get Jesus' attention. "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Literally it says, Jesus stopped, and he said, "Bring him to me." So you think, have him come to me. You have to think, the blind guy's over there, Jesus is here. Why would he do that? Why would Jesus want you to come to him? Think about that one. So these guys come over and say, "Hey, good news, Jesus wants you to come over." So they bring him over to him. This guy's been screaming his name, and this is what Jesus asked him. "What do you want?" And I've always been fascinated by that question. And then basically Bart said, "I want to see," and he says, "Okay, you can do that," and he was able to see. So a lot of key principles in that as far as crying out to God, what do you want? So taking it to a business question, a better question would be, what do you think you want? So I play this drill, I call it my Solomon drill. Anyone heard of this guy named Solomon? Pretty smart dude. I want to give you an idea of what would you do right now if I was to give everyone here for coming here tonight $1,000. Would anyone in this room get excited? Here's $1,000. Anyone? $1,000, take the tax, don't worry about tax or tithe. What would you do with that? So what would you do right now if I gave you $1,000? What would you do? Save it where? For what? Gaining interest. Why?
So that eventually I can spend it.
On what?
Student loans.
Okay, so I'd pay that. So would $1,000 make a dent on your student loans? Not probably a big debt. So anyone else, what'd you do with $1,000? Anyone have a party here? Anyone? Anyone at all? Sarah, you'd have a party? Okay. So you think about that. What would you do if I gave you $1,000? Here's the next level of questioning. What would you do if I gave you $10,000? If I had the ability right now to give you $10,000, what would you do with it? Pay off student loans? What else? What would you do? Buy a car? Travel? Where would you go? Quick, where would you go? To another continent. Why? Where? What? South Africa? Europe? Where? Italy? Tuscany? Madrid? Barcelona? You don't know. Okay, so give her 10. And what would anyone else do with $10,000? Anyone pay any debt? Yes, yes.
I want to travel to Disney World. I love that place, and I've been there 15
Where?
times. Disney World.
Disney World. Okay, she'd go to take a Disney World. Would you go by yourself?
I take my friends, Kelsey and my mom.
How many days would you stay?
And my other friend, Emily.
Okay, Emily, how many days would you stay? A week, 10 days, 2 weeks, a month?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. So let me take it to another level. See, I'm messing with you on here, but if you grasp this, it will change how you live your life. Because I asked, do you want to live your life accidentally, live your life on purpose? Most people live their life accidentally and they end up working all their life and they end up broke. The average 65-year-old today ends up with about $300 in savings. So they worked all their life and they're broke. Anyone want to get on that plan? So here's the next question. What would you do if I gave you $100,000? What would you do with it? What? Student loans. Would anyone buy a house? How big? Where? Why? Where would it be? What would you do with $100,000? Would anyone pay off their student loans? Would anyone help their mom and dad? Anybody? Anyone take a vacation? Now I'll mess with you again on here because most people I've already lost you because you haven't had a job yet. You don't understand the comprehension of money. As a general rule, you just haven't had to be responsible for the light bills or the phone bills, or you just haven't. As a general rule, you haven't had to. What would you do if I gave you $1 million? What would you do? What would you do if I gave you $10 million? What if your son, LeBron James, when he turned 18, he signed a $100 million contract? What was he if he was your son? My point on that, again, what would you do? What do you want, and what would you do with the money? See, there's three key. What I found in that is that once I got to, it takes about $200,000 to $300,000 for the average family, Troy, to get their, they can buy their house and get out of debt and do all this stuff on that. So we get $200,000 or $300,000. But once you get to $1 million or more, you assign purpose to the money, which is, I can give back. And if you truly go back and say, what would I do if money were not a factor? What career would I pursue? What impact would I have? Well, how could I make a difference? And you'll find your purpose somewhere in that question. I always believe if I ask the right question, I'll get people's attention. I'll get them on track. So I try to live my life on purpose, and I've made a lot of money, and I've given a lot of money, and my goal now is to teach the next generation what I already know about money and finance. And again, the challenge in that is you can get a degree, but if you don't know why you're here, what's your purpose, it's hard to line up to get excited about going to work. I mean, and the third component to that is understanding your life is not just about making money, it's about impacting people. So how many people in this room would wish their parents would have bought into this concept about, having $1 million, having $10 million to move towards that focus on there, because it's about impacting on here. Some of the, I had some Bible verses tied to this, and the one, 2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 10, you can look it up. It's about giving with the right attitude. So if you make money and you give back, what's the process in that? Genesis 41, 4 through 36 was about Joseph, this guy named Joseph. The country was in a mess, and he planned a little bit, and so when they had a drought, he was able to take care of a whole nation. So planning is an important part. 1 Timothy, the thing that I found also, I have taught finance classes for I was on a sabbatical for about 5 or 6, 7 years now on teaching people, and I focused on some other areas, and this is one of the first times I'm teaching in Michigan in a long time, but I teach between 150 and 200 classes a year, and I teach between 10 and 15,000 people these basic principles. And what I found is when you look at the Word of God, there's more verses in the Bible about the concept and topic of money than any other topic. And I believe the reason is that money is what links us to this world. The currency, how we spend it, how we make it, how we give it, all that, how we spend it, all that is how we link to the world on there. But what I found is that Jesus is very harsh, and the scriptures are very harsh about those that mishandle money. And in 1 Timothy 5 through 8, which is also in Proverbs, it says, "But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So the point is, if God harshly judges people for the mishandling of money. And it's an ongoing process of learning. And this other verse that I wanted to give you in the planning model of what a Bible verse on planning was Proverbs 21:5. It says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty." So you're going to lead a life that you're going to work your whole life and end up broke like the masses. 9 out of 10 people get to retirement and they have no money. They live in poverty. They only live in Social Security. That is not, I don't believe that's how we're supposed to live. In Proverbs it says, "A wise man leaves to inheritance to his children's children." Now, Heather and Troy's grandpa was a wise man. He was able to leave an inheritance to his children's children. I meet very few men in my life that are wise men, biblically from that Bible verse. So one of my goals that I have now in this season of my life is I'd like to teach up this next generation about improving the business literacy and financial literacy. And so some basic life skills that I've taught my son that I wanted to learn is that you have to have basic financial skills, because if you make a lot of money, you can make a lot of mistakes financially. But when you reach a point, if you make a financial mistake, you don't have much income, guess what happens? They turn off the lights, they repossess the cars. And you know you can't default on your student loans. The government will chase you until you die. And then when you die, they'll chase your family and your estate. You can't default, you can't go bankrupt on your student loans. But one of the first basics financial skills that I want people to understand is you just have to understand math. And here's my revelation: spend less than you make. I see doctors that make $200,000–300,000 a year, and they spend, $50,000 or $100,000 more than what they make. So I've seen people make $20,000 a year and they spend $30,000 a year. How do they do that? They use credit card. They leverage their income. The second skill that I believe in is business skills. How do you become valuable to your employer? So like if I'm the person out there that you're interviewing with. I'm the guy that, as the athletic director, we had social media policy, and I'm working on a plan that I was going to create between 20 and 30 jobs for students at $10 to $15 an hour for the summer. And so what I do is I watch social media, and I see all the smart alecks that how they're criticized and nasty on the social media, the athlete side of it. I wouldn't hire any of them. So in the business skills, how do you become valuable to your employer? Ask lots of questions. So real simple. Financial, spend less than you make. Business skills, ask lots of questions. The person that sits back and asks no questions has no value to me as a business owner. The third skill on here, which is you might think is kind of odd, it's on relationships. Here's a relationship skill. Get along with other people. I don't know if in your dorms how it's set up, do you have anyone in your dorm that's just like really irritating, is always in drama and causing trouble? How many people want to be around that person? It's the same thing in the business world. People don't want to hang out with people that are negative and what they call them, negative Nancy's. Still on? Okay. I'm just going to sit down. So real simple, get along with people. If you spend less than you make, if you ask lots of questions and become valuable to your employer and you get along, you'll move up the corporate ladder or your own business, or you'll have clients that want to come back to you on it. Some other, is anyone, again, for those that are looking for a job, some key little points that I'm looking for as a business person is how do you stand out from a crowd? Is some real simple things. One is smile. I noticed Haley is a smiler, and then the goofy girl in purple next to her, the artist, she's a smiler. So those stand out. So when people come in, I watch people. So as a business person, you have no idea who's coming in here that I could give you an opportunity to make a six-figure income. If you impress me, there was a gentleman that wore a blue blazer. Is he here still? I don't see him. He came and gone. He dressed sharp. And that was the second point, you dress sharp. How do you stand out a little bit? Now, I know you're in college, but you don't know who you're going to run into. You didn't know who was coming here tonight. You don't know that, hey, I'm looking to hire people that I can personally mentor to show them how to make $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. That's what I'm looking for right now. My son Jameson's, he graduated. He's the difference between him and you. Jameson, go ahead and stand up. So this is my son Jameson, just graduated from Mid-Continent. So you look at how he's dressed, the difference between where you're at and where he's at, he's graduated, and he's going to be running my branch office in Kentucky. So I'm going to show him how to make a six-figure income. Now I need people to go work with him. I'm looking at doing that in this area. So the key on is you don't know who you're going to meet. So when I was where he was at, I was told to never wear jeans. So when I went in the public, I wore a white shirt, dress pants, and a tie for almost 20 years because I never knew who I was going to run into. It might have been like Heather and Troy's grandpa or their uncle or their mom and dad, and those were the people that you stand out by just how you're dressing sharp. So again, how do you stand out proud? Smile, dress sharp. Third point, show up early, stay late. When I got here, I was looking, those are the leaders that I would want to hire. So again, little things that you think, well, it's inconvenient to do this or that. If you want to stand out and you want to have an opportunity to be different, it's easy to do. Fourth thing on here, proof your work, which means your texts and emails. If you text me or email me and there are errors in it, I will throw away anything that you have and I will ignore your resume. If you send texts that are LOL or whatever the codes are on there, or you misspell it or you abbreviate, I will not hire you. And a life skill, you should continue to work on your writing skills, continue to work on your verbal skills your entire life. It is astounding to me. I have seen people with their master's degree in leadership and they've not mastered leadership. I've seen people with their master's in business and they have very poor written skills. The quality of the work is, I oversaw 30-some people, full-time staff, and 30, 40 part-time staff, and most of them I wouldn't hire in the real world. Isn't that amazing? I mean, think about that. Because you don't proof your work, and you don't even know how to do a paragraph on it. So those little things, I'm trying to say, what did this demographic need here, as far as, like, we're almost in April, you have, what, 1 more month of school on it? Anyone excited about getting out of here, right? The fifth thing on here, which is extremely important in the business world, in the finances, because if you don't do these things, you won't get a job, which means you don't have money, which means I can't help you. Because if you have no income, I'm not going to waste my time with you, right? I can't help you. The fifth thing on here is very important, is keep all your public social media clean and neutral. And the key is public. If you want to do private and you want to be stupid on your social media, because, especially your pictures and comments, because watch what you put on social media, because we are. I have staff people, their only job was to watch social media. You have a resume come in, look at their social media. What have they put on their, we were looking for Christian employees, we look on their media, but we go on their social media 2 years ago and see what were they putting on their social media 2 years ago. If they were at drunken parties, we wouldn't hire them. And I'll tell you that 90% of the campus that I have, I wouldn't hire 95% of the students on my campus because of their poor social media. So how important is Twitter to you guys? How important is Facebook and all that stuff on it? You might think it's important to share everything to you, but I'm here to tell you is that if you share the wrong things, how you are on social media is how you'll be behind my back as an employee. And if I'm talking about trying to be a person of integrity and trust and honor, I want to make sure the people that work for me are good people all the time. In the shadows, in their private life, I want them to be good people all the time. This next point on here that I want to do is Mark 6:30 through 44. It's the feeding of the 5,000. Have you ever heard that story? The concept of the story, the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus is in a boat and he comes up to the shore and he sees all these people that have come to him. And they've paid a price to get to him. They had to pay a land tax and sea tax to the Romans to get to him. And what had happened, does anyone know what happened just before the feeding of the 5,000? Because this is one of the most significant events where Jesus went from, hey, I'm a pretty interesting figure in history, that he changed everything, because he soon walked on water after this. You know what happened? Why did Jesus get in the boat and leave? You know anything about John the Baptist? What happened to John the Baptist just before that? They cut off his head, put it on a silver platter, and they laughed and mocked John the Baptist. So Jesus heard that news, his cousin was going to go off to grieve, and he gets up to the crowd and he says he was overwhelmed by the massive people that came to him and wanted his needs. So he spent all day ministering to and teaching these people. And it reached a point when they were done ministering, and that the Gentiles didn't eat the foods of the foreigners, and that's why they couldn't just go into town and buy food, because they didn't have like a Kroger's or a Myers or something like that. And so this is what an interesting teaching. Jesus looks at that, and the disciples come and says, hey, we need to break up this meeting so we can, these people can go back home and go get something to eat. And what did Jesus say to them? You feed them. What's the first response that man, the people, the disciples, what they say? We don't have enough money. It would take several months of wages to feed these 5,000 men. It's about 12 to 15,000 people. So here's you picture the situation. They come to Jesus. He identifies a need. They're hungry, and Jesus tells you to feed them. And he said, we don't have any money. And I like his response. He said, go inventory, what do you have? So he took the 12 disciples and they went out amongst these 5,000 families. And how long would it take to do that? Picture, how big is Saginaw Valley? How many students? 10,000. So picture all of Saginaw Valley, and I have 12 people that have to go around and find out how many, does anyone have that those people have any food? And what they find, they found one little boy, they bring up one little boy, what does the little boy have? 5 loaves and 2 fish. So you picture how long that take. When we read it in Scripture, it takes a second. It took time for them. Jesus is sitting back here, and they're hungry. Go feed them. On there, go. You go see inventory what you have. We identified a need. They're hungry. Go see what you have. They bring this little boy with his parents, and he has the 5 little loaves of bread and 2 fish. So what did God ask? What did Jesus ask of him? Did he take part of it, or did he take all of it? Did he take all the fish and all the loaves, or is just part of it? You know? Does anyone know? He took all of them. You know, so with the picture, he took all of them, and I always found that interesting that he identified a need, inventory what do you have, give it all to God. So when I look at you, what do you have? Do you have a lot of money? No. What do you have? You have the ability to pray, you have the ability to speak, you have the ability to walk, you have the ability to talk, you've got time. So what can you give to God? Give it all to God. And what was interesting is, so Jesus has the 5 loaves and 2 bread, and now he tells them, we got Saginaw Valley, go out in 12 of you and go set them in groups of 50 and 100. So he established order. So he's got in his hand the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and he establishes order. And again, the 12 tribes on it. And financial order for me is have an income plan, have an insurance plan in case you smash your car or you die, or get health insurance, have a short-term savings plan, have a plan to get out of debt, and a plan to get into a home and pay off your mortgage. And the 5th thing is long-term savings. So there's some basics that you can do on there. The word mortgage, does anyone here in this room know what the Greek is, like mortis gage, what that means? Any scholars in here? Mortis means death, gauge means grip. So picture that, you get a mortgage and you get a death grip on your finances. How many people want to sign up for a death grip on your finances? It means an agreement till death. That's what mortgage means, an agreement till death. Do you think Satan doesn't know that? Do you think he doesn't laugh at you because you're clueless when it comes to money and finance? I've seen people with their masters in finance and they don't have any clue about personal finance. So and I believe, well, let me keep moving on. So they established order, and then what Jesus did, he gave thanks to God. And then as soon as he gave thanks to God, this is what I love about God's math. It was instantaneous, multiplied, 1,000-fold blessing. So picture, he takes this little handful of food and he does his thing. And it just, some reason, it just keeps making fish and makes, making bread. I don't know how it happened. But all the people's needs were met. And then what happens when God blesses something, he expects you to be responsible with it. So what he did is he had the 12 disciples, when everyone was done eating, he had to go pick up 12 basketfuls of loaves and fish. And the word basket in that section, it was the same word that they lowered the man down from the roof in the basket to the ground. So picture a basket, then fill a man that a man could fit in, and they filled 12 baskets of it. So when I look at it, identify a need, inventory what do you have, give it all to God, establish order, give thanks to God, the blessing thing happens, the responsibility of a blessing is pick it up, and then Jesus went and sent them off and went back up, and that was when, after he met everyone's need, he was able to get away and grieve. That's why he got in the boat and went across the lake on there. And I always found that just a fascinating story. So, my pause is here because I'm trying to be real respectful of your time. The second component of that, I'm going to go ahead and do this if you don't mind. Jesus sends the 12 disciples that had worked all day in the boat, and it says it was in the middle of the night, about the early morning. They're in the middle of the lake, about 4 or 5 miles out, and it was in the middle of a storm. So they're fishermen, and it's interesting. So they're in the boat rowing, and they've been rowing for hours trying to get across to the other side. And I find this part fascinating. It says Jesus is walking on the water. After he did this miracle thing, And he was in the peripheral, so he's watching the boat. He's in the peripheral, watching the boat, the 12 disciples in the boat that have helped him, and that he needs them to help fulfill his ministry. And the verse says this, and he would have passed them by. And I think, well, why wouldn't he pass them by? And I believe that those disciples in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm, were in the midst of death. And Satan knew that Jesus was, he just revealed who he was, and who significantly identified his deity, and he knew he had to dig with a cross. Satan wanted to wipe out those 12 disciples at that night. And I truly believe that he wanted to take them out. But Jesus, they scream out thinking they see a ghost. He comes up to him. He didn't get into the boat until what happened? They asked him to get in. He steps in the boat. What happens to the storm? Calm. Instantaneously calm. And it said they were overwhelmed. And basically, it's the first, they were overwhelmed in unbelief of what had happened. And then Jesus says, "Oh, you of little faith." And it says, instantaneously, he was on the other side. Jesus didn't need a boat ride that night. He needed the disciples in the boat. Saginaw Valley needs the men and women that have the courage to get in this room and to listen to some weirdo from Lansing, Michigan, who's out in Kentucky helping this little school out here, to have the courage. He needs you to get other men to be an example. You being here tonight says so much. You don't understand how impactful you just sitting here during the time when the basketball games are going on, and you made a choice to put God first. That astounds me as a business guy. Astounds me. So Jesus needs you here at Saginaw Valley to just don't do what everyone else is doing. Stand out, be different. The final closing points that I have on here for life skills. Financially, as a business financial guy, the biggest financial mistake, what do you think the biggest financial mistake that I see across the board, hands down, no question, is the worst financial mistake that the average family makes? Individuals and families make. Do you have any guesses? Credit cards? No, close. Anybody? What? Spend more, that's a key. The worst financial mistake that people make is they have a vehicle payment. They have a car payment. You'll always have a transportation expense, but you don't have to have a car payment. If you can understand that concept, that here's the deal. The average person spends about $380 a month for one car payment on it. And they think they have to have a car payment life. If you can get into a car, keep the cost down, and then in the next 3 to 5 years start paying cash for your cars, and you save what you would have paid for a car payment, by the time you're in your mid-40s, you could have $500,000 to $1 million in savings. And you would definitely be a millionaire by the time you're 60 if you chose not to have a car payment. You've got tremendous examples between Troy and Heather where they understand not being in debt. They understand paying off their home. They understand about saving. They understand about giving. Because they've done that, God has honored them with their finances. It's not about how much money they make, because they don't make lots of money, but they are very, very good with what they do, and God's blessed what they've done. So the key on here, if you want to be wealthy in your future, don't overspend on your vehicle. Don't have a vehicle payment. Isn't that amazing? Here, I've studied finance for 30 years, and the revelation I have is if you overspend on car payment, you'll be broke. You have to say no to the right things. I'm not saying you can't have a nice car, just pay cash for it. My goal was to save a lot of money, have the interest of my investments, buy my Mercedes, or buy my Corvette, or buy my whatever. Have the interest of my investments, buy my cars. Because vehicles are a waste as far as expense. Business thing, my key principle in closing, do more than you're asked. I absolutely hate when someone says it's not my job. I would basically fire the person and get them out of my department, because I don't want them around me. Our job is to serve and to do it better than anyone else with excellence and with the right attitude. Relationally, here's a big revelation I found in relationships and skills. Forgive quickly and often. I'm not very good at that one. If you learn to forgive quickly and often, you'll most likely be married to the same person for the rest of your life. Is that a good one? Forgive quickly and often. Have you ever heard that in the scripture, the Word of God thing? Have you ever heard about this forgiveness thing? Have you ever heard that one? And then how you do that, how do you give for quickly and often, you have to reframe the offense. If someone said this thing about me, and that just irritates the stink out of you, you have to say, that person might be going through a hard time, they're doing this, you have to reframe how you do it on it. And then fourth thing was some wisdom that one of my widows, I'm in the business of money and finance, so whenever bad things happen, like someone dies or has a stroke or car accident, I usually one of the first phone calls that people call. You know, if someone's in the hospital, and I had one of my clients got cancer, and I remember meeting with him, and it's one of those really just stunning things in life when you're sitting there and you're sitting with a man that you know is dying and got very limited time left in his life. And he said, Kevin, will you please make sure my wife is okay? And it's like, what a commission that is. And then as I follow up with this widow, she said something to me that shocked my soul. One says, how do you get through this, the death of your husband in your early 40s? And she told me this, I cling to God. I thought, wow. So if you want to get through life and have a great journey ahead of you, which I hope that you do, be smart with your money, business, just stand out a little bit in your business world, forgive quickly and often, and cling to God. And the two closing verses that I had for you tonight is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 is some of my favorite verses. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, yet in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your paths. And then he'll bring Kevins of the world to you to help you. That's what happens. I mean, and then the second verse on here is Colossians 3:2. It says, set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. And I again, as a person that's been in the Christian community and worked at Christian schools, and I mean taught in churches for years and years, and then to be at a Christian institution now and see that the demographics that we have there are all these athletes that they don't ask, are you a Christian? I mean, and there's kids that came to our school that they didn't even know what chapel meant. So I had to reteach them to see a group of young men and women here that are not ashamed to come here and be here on a Tuesday night. Today's Tuesday? Wednesday. Tuesday. I have no idea what day it is. I'm constantly moving. But I'm very proud of who you are, and I, for the ladies in here, you're the kind of ladies I want, that you put God first, that I want you to marry my son. There's dads out there that would want you we're looking for you. So I'm just so proud that you would not be ashamed of your faith here in a public institution. For the men in here, I'm here to tell you, you're absolutely rare to be here on it. And I say that because I believe that God has put you here tonight to hear my voice and say God has called you to do great things with your life. He has great expectations in your life to do something with it, which is stand up for your faith. Go see that movie, God's Not Dead, and I see in you the theme of that movie. So again, thank you for having me here tonight. And my prayer, if you have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. I know we got to get out of here because Haley says, my time's up. I have to go. Any questions on money or finance real quick? And I'll say a quick prayer. Did you learn anything? Hopefully you get at least one thing. Cling to one thing on here. So Father, thank you for these young men and women